Yeah, yeah. Pastor Dad Podcast, Acts 420. We can't stay quiet. Huh!
Hey everybody, welcome back for another episode of the Pastor Dad Podcast. Been a couple weeks since I uploaded anything. Just been busy. Been busy as always. I've tried several times to get new content created, new episodes out. Got a ton of ideas, and they're cataloging. They're just like they're stacking up. I'll never get to all of them, but we'll try. And so this one is titled, at least the thumbnail is titled "What the Hell." A response to Frank Turek. I'm not trying to be funny. I'm not trying to swear. Just a little play on words. So the topic is related theologically to hell and to some things that have been kind of going on in broader social media culture and things like that. So we are going to take a look at the doctrine or the topic of hell and how it's been sort of communicated and talked about recently. So a while back, to kick this off, Kirk Cameron, if you know him from any number of shows he was in when he was a younger actor. More recently, he has done a lot of ministry with The Way of the Master and Ray Comfort. So they have been friends and colleagues in ministry for a number of years. He's been also involved in some movies, the Left Behind series. And so he's quite well known, but he recently kicked the hornet's nest, so to speak, by bringing up the idea of hell. Not just the idea of hell, but the idea that we might have had it wrong. And so he puts this. He has a show called the Kirk Cameron Show. A subtitle of those shows is you'll see in the show itself is one of the titles is Dangerous Conversations. And I think I'm not sure, I don't watch the show a lot myself, but this one came to my attention just because of topics I follow and different pages that I follow. But he has these dangerous conversations about things that kind of feel like they're off limits at times. And I think that he does this show with his son predominantly. At least in this particular episode, it is his son that he's speaking with. And so you can check that out. I've actually thrown a QR code on the screen there. You can, don't do it now. Don't do it now. You'll navigate away from this important video. But if you click on that, take a picture of that QR code or use your phone. Maybe you're on TV right now or on your PC, and you can take a screenshot or a picture of that QR code with your phone, and you can navigate to this episode where you can take a look at how we got to where we are with Kirk Cameron's questioning of hell. So he dared to open his mind up to another view of hell. And to set this episode up, I want to for the uninitiated, historically the church has viewed hell in a few different ways. Predominantly, the main views have been, of course, the one that you probably already know about. That's called the traditional view, and that is alternatively called the eternal conscious torment view. The idea that people that go to hell are kept there in eternal torment, and so the punishment is eternal, but so is the punishing. The punishing will go on forever and never, and so that's eternal conscious torment. There's another view that says actually, eventually, all people will be saved. There's some language in the New Testament that seems to suggest that Christ has come to redeem all things. And so they would take that language and they would say, actually, I think that language speaks better to the idea of universal reconciliation, the idea that eventually everybody will be saved. Now, that's to be distinguished. Evangelical universalism should be distinguished from the idea of pluralism. Pluralism is the concept that sort of all roads lead to Rome. It doesn't matter what you believe. You can be in any religion, any belief system, and those belief systems themselves lead to eternal life. What evangelical universalism says is distinct from that view of pluralism is the idea that no, it is through Christ that everybody will get to heaven, but they will get there eventually. There's post-mortem opportunity or some mechanism by which we're purified, and everybody gets a chance and will eventually spend eternity with Christ in heaven. Well, new heavens, new earth, it's another topic for another time. But heaven, as we've kind of not as we've conceived it, but heaven, the place of eternal bliss with God. So we'll leave it at that. So that's the second view, is universal reconciliation. The third view is probably the lesser known, is conditional immortality, or alternatively called annihilationism. That's the idea that whatever our view, whatever the nature and duration of hell is, eventually the result is the same, that you're thrown into the fires of hell, and eventually the fires of hell consume what's thrown into it. So annihilationism would posit in eventual annihilation, the judgment, or the sentence being death, for however long that takes and however painful that might be. The punishment is death. And so they would get to annihilation by way of God as a consuming fire, and the lake of fire is going to consume what's thrown into it. And so those are brief, just very brief, whet the appetite maybe, and kind of set the stage for the conversation to follow. Now, when this all happened, I actually posted a brief response on Facebook. I wasn't sure I was even going to upload the video because I wasn't really happy. I didn't do any editing. I wasn't really thrilled with the way I worded things. So I left it on Facebook. And if you're not following there, you can find me there. I don't have a QR code for you, but you can look at that in my bio of the YouTube page. There's a link to my Facebook page as well. So I posted a brief response to sort of the backlash that occurred from all of this in the wake of this episode. And I wasn't altogether surprised by it, though I am always disappointed by the quality or lack of quality in the thinking that people do in a topic that's emotionally charged like this one. And I understand why it's emotionally charged, but I'm still disappointed by the quality of conversation that we see come out of it. Now, since I posted that video on Facebook, there have been a number of responses, prominent responses from people much more prominent than myself. So for those that follow my ministry and those that I'm responsible for at the church, my goal really, if this never gets beyond just being a help for those who call me pastor or dad, that's the Pastor Dad podcast, makes sense. But if it never goes beyond that, I want at least to help those that call the church where I serve home. I want to help you out in your thinking about these things. Truth should be our focus and our pursuit in all things, no less in an emotionally charged topic like hell. So I want to come to one post in particular from a very prominent apologist named Frank Turek. So here was the post, and I'll go ahead and read it and then respond a little bit to it. But he says this: if there is no hell, what's the purpose of Jesus? What are we saved from? We're not saved from anything if there is no hell. We just die and that's it. If there's nothing to be saved from, then there's nothing to that statement that Jesus said he came as a ransom to save people from judgment. And you can see I've left a bit of a maybe a little snarky response, but it wasn't meant to be primarily snarky. It just was meant to be a thoughtful interaction with the post, actually. It's not just what you're saved from, it's even more what you are saved to, as if Jesus represents a little more than fire insurance. And so that's what I'm going to try to tease out in the next few minutes here that we have together. And hopefully it is a help to you, and hopefully I make my case plainly and clearly, so you can see the importance of quality thinking around this topic and any other topic. We have to be careful about how we do this and how we think about stuff. Now, I want to offer some grace to Frank Turek. He's done a lot of amazing work. He's not one of the guys that I follow most closely as far as theology and apologetics, but I know that he's done a lot of good. He's written a number of books. and he's quite popular on YouTube and other places. Goes to colleges, talks to people, and I know that he's done some great work. But nobody's perfect, and I've said things that I probably should have been corrected on, or have been corrected on, or will need to be corrected on. The goal is always truth, but we're fallible human beings, and so we get it wrong. So I want to first offer some grace that this may just be a sloppy post. Like he just was responding to the fervor and the sort of the energy around Kirk Cameron's video, and just trying to add his voice and the weight of his voice, because he does have considerable influence. So maybe he's just trying to add his weight to the conversation. And I don't fault him for getting involved, but I just think this is kind of sloppy thinking, especially from somebody who is usually a careful thinker and kind of makes a living, in telling people to think carefully. So I want to keep in mind that this is a response. This is a response to Kirk Cameron and to conditional immortality. Now, I don't know that for certain, but I'm pretty sure the timing and everything. You can correct me if I'm wrong about that, but pretty sure this is a response to the whole dust up with Kirk Cameron posting that video. And because he's so well known, I mean, it gets more reach, and the prominent apologists feel like they have to respond to it. So this is a response to Kirk Cameron and the reality that Kirk Cameron has opened himself up to the possibility that conditional immortality or annihilationism is correct. So there's a couple problems that surface with this post. The first one, I think, and the most obvious one, if you studied conditionalism at all, is that neither Kirk Cameron nor conditional immortality proponents ever deny that hell exists. The entire argument is about the duration and nature of the final punishment, not that there is no final punishment. And so he's missing the mark right from the very beginning. He's arguing against a thing that we're not saying, that conditionalists are not saying. And you hear me say we are not saying, so you can read into that I am a proponent of conditional immortality. I think it's far and away the most biblical position that there is, and I'm happy to defend that against those that would say it's not. But the second problem, and maybe the bigger problem, probably the bigger problem, is that there might not be any purpose for Jesus outside of helping us to avoid hell. Is that really what we see when we see Jesus? That his primary purpose in life is that he might help us simply to avoid hell. Now that is a major benefit of knowing Christ, but I want to take a step back and say, the idea of hell itself was not a very developed concept in the Old Testament, not developed at all. In fact, the word in Hebrew that is most often translated in wrongly in translations like the King James version, they translate the word Sheol as hell, and so that's part of why we've kind of conflated the ideas. Now, Sheol is simply a sort of shadowy, place or realm of the dead, and so you'd be more right to call it the grave than to call it hell. You're closer to understanding what Sheol means to call it the grave, the place where we bury people. But I think there's like, more metaphorical, like the realm of the dead. So there's a little bit more theologically there than simply the place where your body is laid. But you'd be closer to right if that's the concept you understood from the word Sheol. David talks in the Psalms about his dead son, his son that had passed away. He cannot come to me, but I will go to him. I will go to Sheol to be with him in the realm of the dead. So it's not a very developed idea in the Old Testament, and so the idea of following God or later in history following Jesus, the Son of God, like the idea that the sole motivation for that would be avoiding hell, defies that the Old Testament covenant people of God didn't have a developed idea of hell. And so, far from being motivated simply by avoiding eternal conscious torment. I would say that we New Testament believers, we don't need to be motivated by that either. That shouldn't be our sole and even primary motivation for following Jesus. So, what are the reasons there are for following Jesus? Well, I think there's a host of them, and I'm only going to just touch on a couple sort of broad categories to hope to make this make sense. Then you can do some digging on your own. You could add in the comments section. You go ahead and add reasons that you might have for following Jesus outside of the idea of just avoiding punishment. And so, some good reasons to believe and follow Jesus. Well, first of all, Jesus said, "I'm the way, the truth, and the life." The word truth, there is inherent value simply in aligning ourselves with truth. In all aspects of life, there's value simply in aligning ourselves to truth. You think just simply mathematically, what value is there in aligning myself to truth mathematically? It's like, well, I can build a square house. I can have square walls. I can, if I align myself to, to myths of dimensions and spaces and geometries that don't really exist, I can't effectively build something. And so that's a very terrible example. But even in life, we see that there is value in, learning what truth is, and then appropriating that truth and living according to that truth in our lives. So I think there's inherent value in aligning yourselves to truth. And of course, I find truth in Jesus as Messiah and King of Kings, Lord of Lords. So following him naturally follows. But in any subject, any topic, there is value inherently in aligning ourselves to the truth. Secondly, Jesus' kingdom, he invites us into this kingdom life. And a lot of times the Bible seems to juxtapose or contrast idea of kingdom life with over and against the idea of empire. So kingdom versus empire, there's some play there. Like empire is sort of the organized world in opposition to God, and then there's kingdom. That's what life lived in accordance with godly principles and following Jesus looks like. And so the two will be, very starkly contrasted. And so Jesus calls us into this life, this kingdom life, characterized by things like righteousness, peace, and joy. The list goes on and on. So there's all sorts of characteristics of the life and the kingdom that God has called us into. And that's not just for us to follow rules, but for our own good. You think about a couple of passages you can look at, and there's many more you could bring up, but John chapter 10 and verse 10, I came to give you life and that more abundantly. I didn't just come to give you life. I came to give you life more abundantly. Now, that doesn't mean, a lot of people think this is life more abundantly means I get the fancier car, I get the bigger house, I bought the boat, I got the big yard, white picket fence, all those things. And of course, kingdom living goes far beyond, what our hedonistic desires of pleasure and owning things goes far beyond any of that. So giving us life more abundantly is much more about, spiritual realities and spiritual truths. But if you look at Matthew chapter 6 and verse 33, it says, and this is in a context of perhaps anticipating somebody worrying about what they're going to eat or wear or, have the provisions they need for life. And Jesus says in his Sermon on the Mount, Matthew chapter 6 and verse 33, he says, "Seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things that you're worried about, all these things that you're concerned about, all these things will be added unto you." So you'll have these things that you need. I understand that you need them, but seek first, make a first priority your seeking after the kingdom, because there's value in that. I think there's a couple of helpful analogies we can use to paint this picture, and so. And the problem of the post that Frank Turek made. Consider that you're given a choice. You're given a choice. On one hand, you can live in this perfect like Stepford community, minus like the horror that like it's like a picturesque. That's probably a bad example. I think Stepford is used for understanding like a picture of patriarchy and stuff. I won't get into that in this video, but picture, if you will, like some perfect suburban community. Everybody's lawns are perfectly cared for. Everyone's kind. Everyone's nice. You're waving. You're happy to see your neighbors. Everything goes well. The laws are enforced, but you don't even really need to enforce them because everybody's already just happy to go along with the rules, and so there's just everything is good about this community, and you can choose to live in that community. Or the other choice, the other side of the coin, is that you can choose to exist in a dungeon and prison, and that's your reality. So the idea and the analogy here is that if you took away the second choice, if you eliminated the second choice of the prison, the dungeon, that terrible existence, by way of analogy, we see that with Frank's argument, there is no point in that perfect life. There is no value in that perfect life anymore unless it's contrasted with the awful life of the prison or dungeon. And so I hope that it's obvious the absurdities that are heaped upon this contrast. That yes, I want to avoid the prison, the dungeon. I don't want to spend any time there, let alone all my time. But even if you were to remove that as a thing of reality, and this is not, it's eliminated as a choice now. To say that there is no value in living in a friendly community with people that mean you well and they care about you and all this is really kind of a silly. It's really kind of a silly argument to make. There's a whole lot that is good about living in that community. I want to use another analogy that may bring this home even more. I don't know. I wanted to use two just in case one didn't resonate as much with certain viewers. But think about marriage. So this is a picture of my wife and I. This has got to be 16 years ago, 17 years ago, something like that. And Tyson was just a baby, my second oldest. And but think about marriage. And if you consider that marriage was simply avoiding loneliness. If there is no possibility of loneliness, the analogy says then, well, what value would there be in marriage? What's the point? If there's no loneliness, then what's the point of marriage? And I think it should be obvious right away that any husband who would say that is demeaning and depreciating the value of his wife and hopefully the scores of reasons that they got married. One benefit of which is, of course, that you're no longer lonely. But if you say that's the sole reason you got married, then it was, or even the primary reason you got married, then you ignore all of the positive reasons you have for wanting to spend your life with somebody who matters. And I think that's maybe even a more complete picture of the analogy here with Frank Turek's post. And again, I think in Grace, I think that it was simply a sloppy post. I think if he had thought through it more carefully, he might have chosen his words differently. He might have not posted it at all. But the idea that there is the whole reason you might get married is simply not to be lonely that's one of the benefits of being married, certainly. But it's so far down on the priority list because there are so many things about my wife and other spouses out there that would say about each other. There are so many positive reasons to want to spend my life with that person that how it affects me should be further down on the priority there. So in the same way, avoiding hell may be a consequence of knowing Jesus, but it is not the reason that Jesus is worth following. Look, Jesus wants to mold us into his image. He wants to transform and conform us to how we are supposed to maximally look like Jesus. And that's the whole point of sanctification, is that the longer we mature in Christ, the more we look like him. And what does that do for us? It does something for us, yes, but it does something for the community that we live in, because the more we look like Christ, the more we are willing to turn the other cheek. The more we look like Christ, the more forgiving we are. The more we look like Christ, the better citizen of the kingdom that we are in general. And so one of the benefits of being in Christ certainly is avoiding judgment, and avoiding the judgment that we deserve as sinful human beings. But far and away, that is not the only or even primary reason to follow Jesus. Follow Jesus for all of the reasons that there are to follow good people, especially the Son of God. So I hope this has been a little bit helpful in framing this conversation. If you want to know more, here's another QR code. And now, if you've made it this long, now I don't mind so much if you scan the QR code and navigate away from this video. But another video you might look at. Now, this doesn't have to do particularly with the conversation I'm having right now, at least not directly. But this is a continuation of the conversation. If you're interested in the discussion of hell theologically and why these guys believe what they believe, this is an excellent conversation. This Hellgate conversation is a follow-up to the Kirk Cameron show episode where he said, "Have we gotten it wrong?" And then he brings on this panel of four scholars who, one of which I happen to know personally, and am proud to know Chris Date, the gentleman in the all the way to the left. But he has four gentlemen on the show. And two of them believe in the traditional view of hell, eternal conscious torment, and two of them believe in conditionalism, or conditional immortality, or annihilationism. And I think this video is an excellent representation of a couple things: the merits of each view, and the difficulties of each view, but also how you can have conversations with people with whom you differ. It's sometimes irritating, and it's sometimes I don't know, for anybody that has spent time studying a particular subject, and you know it just inside and out, and then you hear somebody who has never even heard of this topic from this angle, and they pronounce judgments upon those people that have studied it and actually have come to different conclusions. It's irritating because it's the person who hasn't done the work is accusing the person who has done the work of all sorts of things that they're not guilty of. For these gentlemen, all four of these gentlemen, to include Kirk Cameron, so all five of them, they start the conversation about how this is all about the Bible. So they put a Bible at the center of the table. So this is about what the Bible says. That's what this is about. That's what we want to get to. That's how we want to chop this up, is to really determine, what does the Bible tell us about the fate of the wicked, or the fate of the finally unrepentant people. And so it's a beautiful representation of the kind of conversation that we can have if we practice grace and love and pursuit of truth. Can conversations still get a little bit heated if you're really passionate about something? Of course. But I've found the most emotional people on a topic are not the most well-read. The most emotional people on a topic are usually the ones that don't have any arguments. They just have their emotions guiding them. And they're loud, but that doesn't mean they're right. The louder you get doesn't mean the more right you are. So keep that in mind. If you want to watch this, I think it's a couple hours long, and I don't even think I've finished the whole thing. Watched as much as I could, and think that you would find this helpful as well. So if you want to know more, check that out. Scan that QR code and navigate to that helpful conversation. So I hope you have enjoyed this episode of the Pastor Dad podcast. I may not be your pastor. I may not be your dad. But if I were, I would want you to pursue truth in all things. I do want you to pursue truth in all things. And so I hope that this episode has helped you to do that. So until next time, God bless you in that pursuit. We'll see you next time.
Yeah. Yeah. Pastor Dad Podcast. Acts 4:20. We can't stay quiet. Huh! Hey! Ho! Bible open on the table. News feed burning on my phone. Kids watching, I'm accountable for what I call truth at home. Faith in the middle of the chaos. Christ over parties and polls. If the culture wanna press us, confess us, we speak what we've seen. And we know we cannot help but speak.